right, so Raw started with Lashley versus Sheamus. It didn't actually start with a promo this time, which is very new. Jimmy Corderas, the referee, he made a reffing rant about this on Twitter, and I'm glad that when he mentioned it, because he talked about this, I think right after NXT, that too many WWE shows are starting with promos, and people are actually starting to you know yada yada yada. We talk before we do anything now. So I'm glad they shaking it up. They did something different on Raw. They started out with this banger of a match between Lashley and Sheamus. Very good match, very aggressive, very physical. They work very well together. Sheamus is becoming one of my favorite wrestlers. I'm talking effusively about Sheamus because he's tremendous. So during the match, Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin come out, and they're being really obnoxious and annoying in how they're rooting for Lashley. During one particular part of the match, right before the commercial, Cedric Alexander does a little bit of distraction. Sheamus is rolled outside the ring where Shelton Benjamin does some cheap shots. Lashley seems to be very unpleased with this. He's like, what's going on? Later in the match, Cedric Alexander is clapping and trying to get Lashley's attention, and Lashley's like, look, not now, not now. Let me handle this. So ultimately, Lashley ends up winning the match by Hurt Lock. Loved it. Thought it was great match. Sheamus is just on a roll. He's hitting a stride here that is pretty unmatched. So after the match, we get a little conversation. The Hurt Business, they jump Sheamus. They beat him up. Shelton Benjamin, Cedric Alexander, they beating him up. Now Lashley doesn't really even like that. He's kind of like, okay, whatever, we'll let that happen. And then Drew McIntyre comes out there. And this is very interesting because Drew McIntyre has never saved Sheamus before. We've talked about this numerous times on this, one of these things. I talk a lot about, archetypes and character archetypes, and that when Drew McIntyre was the champion, he never came out and helped Sheamus. They were friends and been friends for 20 years, but he never had Sheamus's back. That was one of the reasons for Sheamus turning on Drew in the first place, is that, he never felt like Drew had his back. He always felt like he was in Drew's shadow. And Sheamus was trying to be a good guy at first, right? And then everybody kept saying that he was going to turn his back on Drew, and nobody trusted Sheamus. And then, it kind of made sense because, like I said, I talked about this before, the transpersonal commitment that for McIntyre, being the champion was more important than being friends with Sheamus. So he didn't really give Sheamus a title shot, even though, he wasn't really in a position to just give away title shots, even though he did agree to give Sheamus a title shot at first. But he didn't really do that. He didn't help Sheamus when Sheamus was getting jumped by Almost and AJ Styles, or, anybody else that he was getting jumped by, the Miz and Morrison and everybody else. He didn't really do anything. So it's odd that right after they have this big brawl, this big no-holds-barred match, that, McIntyre decides to come out and save Sheamus. And it makes sense because he's not the champion anymore. So now he's looking at it like, okay, this is partly has to do with being the champion because the champion is connected to this. But he comes out, he gets rid of Cedric Alexander, backs down Shelton Benjamin. Then he gets in the ring and he starts to sort of trying to bitch out Lashley. He's telling Lashley, come on, throw a punch. I'm going to put my hands behind my back. You throw your punch. And Lashley just wants to tear McIntyre apart. He's looking for a reason to tear McIntyre apart. And he's, really, he wants to, but MVP's like, no. Business. Think of business, We're going to handle this at WrestleMania. You don't gotta be bothered with Lashley. You don't gotta be bothered with McIntyre right now. All of this was fine. All this was good, I like the idea of Lashley wanting to be the fighting champion, wanting to be the fierce champion. He's a little bit of a warrior himself. But at the same time, he's trying to be a businessman. He wants to take a step back. He don't want to get his hands too dirty. Later, Lashley and MVP confront Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander. They saying, you dudes, embarrassed us by interrupting, making it seem like Lashley couldn't beat Sheamus by himself. Then, furthermore, you two numbskulls lost the tag team titles and embarrassed yourselves. How are you going to make this right? And so they try to make it right by challenging Drew McIntyre to a handicap match, which never goes well. This never goes well. So before we get to the handicap match, Drew McIntyre, we got to talk about Sheamus. Sheamus is like, all right, he's questioned, he's asked, why does Drew McIntyre want to help him? Like, why would Drew help you after he comes, after the two big brawls that you guys have had? Why would he come help you? And for Sheamus, it kind of made sense. He said, look, there's respect there. There's a lot of respect there. And say, I don't back down from fights. I live for the fight. I want the fight. Where's the fight? And as he's talking about, it makes sense for him because there's, all that respect there between him and McIntyre. Here comes Riddle. And Riddle is circling around this guy, asking him about the Loch Ness Monster, asking him about leprechauns, magic shit. And I guess Riddle, despite saying he was a wrestling fan his whole life, must have missed all those years Hornswoggle was living under the fucking ring. Because if he did see it, he would know leprechauns are real. They just live under the fucking ring. So apparently, one day we're going to have to put fucking Dylan back under the fucking ring. So Riddle wants to know if leprechauns are real. Sheamus should have just said, yes, I don't know shit about the Loch Ness Monster, but it ended up getting a little bit more interesting from here. I know I skipped far ahead. I just wanted to get Sheamus out the way. So he's talking about this scooter, and Sheamus looks at the scooter kind of, as Riddle is talking about how cool the scooter is, and then Sheamus hit him with it. And I thought, like, okay, cool. This match is for WrestleMania. Okay, cool. Sheamus, Riddle, they kick ass. They lay into each other. This is a good match. It's a good match. It's not a storyline. It's just a good match. So, which means it's probably going to be on the kickoff show or at the start of the show. Still fine. Still good. Okay. You got something for Sheamus to do. Sheamus is going to challenge for the U.S. title. Probably not win it. But, it's something. It's a good challenger for Riddle. Sheamus, despite losing a lot to main event guys, is a scrappy dude and is really going to put Riddle over as a tough bastard. And that's really kind of Sheamus's deal. He does a good job of putting people over as being really tough. Sheamus is shoe leather at this point, dog. Like, you might be able to beat him, but it ain't going to be easy. He's gonna make you work for it. And there's a lot to be said about that. There's a lot to be said about that. So we go over to Drew. Let's go to Drew now. So Drew is like, okay, why is Drew helping Sheamus? Why did Drew help Sheamus? So he basically says, like, look, we don't get along, but I'm not going to sit back and let two guys jump him. Trying to be a little bit more heroic. Pretty weird. Didn't really come off that way. So then Adam Pearce says, hey, look, the Hurt Business have challenged you to a handicap match. And he says, I normally I wouldn't try to sanction anything like that. It's kind of silly. But, I feel obligated to run it by you. What do you think? So Drew says, I'll do it, but if I win, ban them from ringside at WrestleMania. Adam Pearce is like, okay. So then what do you think happens? Well, you already know because you probably already watched Raw. The Hurt Business, the guys who were the tag team champions just 2 fucking weeks ago, get beat by Drew McIntyre. The guys who were the tag team champions 2 weeks ago get beat by Drew McIntyre. I'll say it again. The guys who were the tag team champions 2 weeks ago get beat by Drew McIntyre. Would have been a perfect time to, let's say, cash in that chip of them two guys arguing all the time, right? Would have been a perfect time to cash in that chip for Cedric Alexander to, go and walk off and let Shelton Felton fight Drew McIntyre by himself. And when he do that, Shelton does his best, but, he's wrestling WWE champion level contender and he gets beat. Could have looked respectable. Shelton isn't, a complete and total jabroni. But instead, they had 2 of these guys fight Drew McIntyre for like 10 minutes and lose. I was very angry. Not even going to lie to you. I was very fucking angry. This pissed me off. Because this is the kind of shit, this is why Andrade left. This is the kind of shit they was doing with Andrade and Angel Garza. When they had momentum and they looked cool and they were doing cool shit. And then what happened? Just have Drew McIntyre knock them around like bowling pins every fucking week. So now we're going to get McIntyre knocking Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin around like bowling pins every fucking week. Why have they just been falling? They looked like bosses just 2 weeks ago, the whole team. Now, these two guys are nothing but jabroni henchmen. They're foot soldiers. They're what was it clay fighters or whatever the fuck they call them in the Power Rangers? Putties. They're putties. They Team Rocket all of a sudden. All the little jabroni, a couple of Yamchas. They're Yamchas and TNs all of a sudden. These guys were great just 2 weeks ago. It wasn't even that long ago. Now all of a sudden they just doing jobs, embarrassing themselves. So MVP goes out there, of course, dresses them down after they lose. So after they lose, MVP's like, look, you guys are an embarrassment. Lashley's like, okay, look, you guys can't handle it. I'm going to go find somebody to handle this McIntyre problem. So he goes into the locker room and he says, everybody in here says they want an opportunity. I got an opportunity right here. Hold up the title. I got an opportunity right here for anybody who goes in there and takes out Drew McIntyre. Put a bounty on him. And I was like, saved it. You saved it. This was great. Bounties are awesome. It's a good way for a heel to build heat and for a character like Lashley to not have to get his own hands dirty. He doesn't need to prove himself to McIntyre. What for? He's already beaten up Drew McIntyre. He's beaten Drew McIntyre up numerous times. Now he gets to get the entire locker room to try to take out. They got 2 weeks to take out, 2 or 3 weeks. 2 weeks, thereabouts, to take out Drew McIntyre. So now you got this locker room which features Humberto Carrillo, who is now jacked. Lucha House Party, you got Ricochet, but it don't necessarily have to be somebody that's in the locker room at that particular point in time. I think a lot of people took the bounty as the people who are literally in that locker room. He was only talking to them. It's like, no, it was a general thing. Anybody who takes out Drew McIntyre, not just anybody in this room, but anybody, you want an opportunity, take out Drew McIntyre. I think this is a good opportunity for some of these guys. Now, everybody in that room was a babyface, by the way. Ricochet's a babyface. Humberto, as far as I know, is still a babyface. Lucha House Party is still a babyface. I'm not sure where Drew Gulak is. I think he's still a babyface. So there were no heels in that room. So we're going to look at somebody trying to step up. Now, of the people in that room, obviously people were very interested in Ricochet. What can Ricochet do? Can Ricochet turn heel? Ricochet is not going to be a physical threat to Bobby Lashley, not to Bobby Lashley, but to McIntyre. You could probably do something slick. Maybe have somebody hit him with a pipe. That's one of my favorite go-to. I love when people get hit with pipes and bats and shit. It just feels very natural. It feels like a gangster movie. So I'm always down for somebody getting hit with a bat or somebody getting hit with a pipe or something like that, in the rib cage and the knee and the jaw or something like that. I don't necessarily need you to use a steel chair. I think that's kind of very pro wrestling. I think if you're going to, hit a dude with a roll of quarters or something, just something different, not a slapjack though. That was just dumb. All right. That was stupid as fuck. But I like this. I like the bounty, and it gives you something to turn into next week. Because now we know that there's all these guys out here who got the temptation. WrestleMania is on the horizon. If for nothing else, you get to take him out and take his spot. How many people are going to be willing to take that shot? It's a great temptation. And it fits the Hurt business because they're, like I said before, when they made the Faustian deal with MVP made that Faustian deal with The Miz. They helped The Miz, they get something in return. Now they're doing the same thing. They're trying to do business. Lashley don't want to waste his time with McIntyre. It would have been better if Adam Pearce would have said like they can't fight. That would have been like a little bit better. But in this situation, it's still a boss and Lashley not really wanting to get his hands dirty. Could have just said, "All right, we cashing chips. Anybody go in there, take out McIntyre. You can get his spot, or we'll give you a title shot. Doesn't matter. However it goes." And I think that's awesome. You know, I would have liked for them to do this earlier, and then this is the impetus for Sheamus to turn heel. Like that would have been excellent. You know, like that would have been a great story. Think about that. If they'd have started this before, like the idea of a bounty, and Lashley could have said, anybody who take out Drew McIntyre, I'll give you a title match. You could take his spot at WrestleMania. And then it was Sheamus, you know? And then that led to Sheamus and Drew having this long stretch of fights up to Fastlane. And, you know, it still could have been, you know, Drew is being betrayed by Sheamus. And Sheamus like, fuck this, I want to be the champion. You know, I want the title shot. You got to respect it. You know? And I remember when Triple H did this with Goldberg. It was fun. This is how they ended up with Batista being a member of Evolution. Because he, you know, I think he was the guy who took out Goldberg, wasn't he? I think that they also tried Mark Henry around that time. I think Kane even tried. But I think Batista was the guy. Because he had a pretty solid match with Goldberg on TV, if I remember correctly. And this is how we ended up getting with Batista and Evolution, because he ended up taking out Goldberg. I would like to see that. You know, somebody. And I saw some people say maybe it's going to be Keith Lee. And you know what? That would be great. That would be awesome if it's Keith Lee. Probably, look, I want Keith Lee sort of to be a contender for Lashley and not necessarily an underling of Lashley. But it would make sense that it would be Lashley and for it to be Keith Lee, because you know they have the friendship is there, you know, as far as them being buddies, and it would be similar to Sheamus, where it would be a big heel turn for Keith Lee, and it would be something different, something new, something fresh, especially for this road to WrestleMania, where there's going to be more eyes on the product than any time in history, or at least for the rest of the year. Okay, you want to turn Keith Lee heel, do a heel Keith Lee, even though I think, I don't really remember Keith Lee being a heel in NXT. It just seemed like he was a face the whole time. But maybe that was just because of the way his presentation was. But having Keith Lee in the Hurt Business, I like the four guys they got, but I think Keith Lee would probably be great in that role. I just don't want nobody to challenge Lashley. Like, he needs to be like the uncontested leader, the uncontested boss, and I think Lee's personality is very strong. He doesn't fit being an underling. He's a big guy. You don't want big dude being an underling to big dude, But Keith Lee would be a great choice. I saw a lot of people say, well, Ricochet. I say, well, how is Ricochet going to be Ricochet doesn't have this fashion sense. Like, he dresses like a nigga from Kentucky, which is what he is. He dresses like somebody Outcast video. Maybe you can put him in a suit, I guess. Ricochet can wear a suit, I guess. Yet with that dumbass earring, though. He can't do that. He cannot do that. He could take that nappy root shit and get the hell out of here with that. But could it be Ricochet? Could you turn Ricochet heel? I don't know. It's an interesting proposition. You got a real interesting proposition here. And it's fun. It's fun. It causes speculation. It gets your mind wandering. Because we know that McIntyre is going to fight through whoever it is. So it has to be somebody who's not going to be too high, which is also why I don't want it to be Keith Lee. Because whoever it is, McIntyre going to have to, take him out. He going to have no choice. So it's going to have to be somebody, it could be the 24/7 crew, because those guys, you could turn them all heel and nobody cares, and then you could just, okay, they were never really involved in the first place. So maybe that's what they'll do. Maybe they'll do everybody in the group is going to attack Lashley. Or it could be the three guys who left Retribution. It could be T-Bar, Mace, and Slapjack. They could, go full APA and be like, okay, we're going to take this guy out. I mean, Mace is a big dude. T-Bar is a big dude. He might be able to get away with that. There's a lot of speculation involved, and I kind of like this. I love this storyline. I like bounties. I like the idea of a unseen threat, where there's a threat in the air, but you can't see where it's coming from. You don't know who it is. I love that idea. Now we get some surprise. We get some intrigue. And, this is what this storyline needed. So perhaps they're going to try to take the next couple of weeks to have various people try to take out McIntyre. And then maybe the night of WrestleMania, you have some cloaked, and they'll probably never do this because they don't ever do stuff like this, but you could have like a cloaked figure, bash McIntyre over the head with like a bat or something. And then, he has to go into that match injured, if he makes it there at all. And then maybe that's a thread you have for the rest of the night. You could do a lot of different things. It opens up the entire realm of possibility for you to do different things. I love bounties. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel. Use the hashtag 3CountCommentary to support the channel. If you want to send money, please do so in the Cash App, which will be in the description. Not in the description, in the comment section. And if you want to send an email, send it to send it to Mr. Slade 8 MRSLADE 84 at gmail.com, or you want to follow me on Twitter, at MongoSlade8. All right, man. Peace out.
Da, 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 da.